kind of figure out why we're doing this? That? Yeah. Well, let's get them back. Our other classes are starting to fill up with people, which is good. So what we're trying to do here, guys, is figure out where the rights that we find in our Bill of Rights, where they come from. Okay, like what tradition, you know, obviously we're looking at 3 English documents here, yes? Dating back to 1215. Now, if you read the little thing at the beginning of each of these, you've got with the Magna Carta 1215, right? And Runnymede, King John, okay? Now, did King John want to sign the Magna Carta? No, he did not. Why? Okay, it's good. For the first time, guys, really listen. For the first time, you're going to see an absolute monarch here place some restrictions on it. Okay, and at the same time, we'll debate which rights we can find in here for people. Okay, but at the same time, providing some rights to the people that live under the power of the king in Great Britain, or excuse me, the English Empire at the time. Okay, and so with this, guys, we don't see a parliament here yet, or a representative government by any means. The king still retains a great deal of power, but it's the wealthy, the aristocrats, and the bishops, the church, that are really trying to, get the attention of the king. Okay, he is only one man. So these people have some power, or influence with the king. Okay, so in this document, the Magna Carta, I did see one person that found freedom of speech. Do we know where that? I mean, like, I don't know if anybody wants to try and defend that. That they saw freedom of speech in here. I mean, certainly not in the modern sense. You know what I mean? Like, it doesn't come out and say that. People can petition the king. People can speak against the king. Say what's in their hearts. That right is not found in here. Now, when it comes to freedom of religion, had several people mark that. Okay, and really having an understanding of what's going on in history at this point is important. Okay. Now, the Protestant Reformation has not taken place. It will not take place for another 300 years. Okay, so the Church of England that is described here, right? The English Church. What kind of church is that? It's Catholic, right? Now, in 1215 England, do you feel like there might have been anybody living on that island that wasn't Catholic? Like, like a pagan? Or what about Jewish people? They've been around a long time. Any Jews maybe living in England? What? There's a real likelihood that there were people that lived there that did not believe in the Catholic Church. You understand? Did those people have freedom of religion? Were they protected? No, this is more about protecting the Catholic Church in England than your individual freedom to worship as you please. You following me? It's not stated as such, and it's not as such. So if you were of a different religion and not Catholic, or maybe you were Catholic and you differed with the church on certain things, but you have the freedom to express that. Probably not. Okay. So I'm going to go veto on that. Right? What about freedom of the press? Any mention of that? Right to bear arms? No? What about quartering of soldiers in your home under the Magna Carta? You marked it? You marked that? Where do you see that? Number 12. No scutage or tax for millipers nor aid shall be imposed in our kingdom unless by the common council of our kingdom. Okay, I think you're probably stretching that a bit.
It says nor aid. You could interpret that as
you could
force people to aid.
Right. But where you found it later on in the petition of right, yes? Did you find it in the petition of right?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's pretty specific there, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like it uses that word. So at this point, I don't think we're there yet, see? Okay. What about no unreasonable search or seizure? Okay, if you look at 39, no free man shall be seized, imprisoned, dispossessed, outlawed, or exiled in any way destroyed, nor will we proceed against or prosecute him except under lawful judgment of peers or by the law of the land. So seized, your person or your property possibly, without due process. 41, it talks about how merchants shall have safety and security in coming into England and going out of England, traveling and staying in England, by water or by land, without unjust exactions, according to ancient right customs, except in time of war, shall be apprehended without injury. You might be able to say that's kind of that one too, May. I think there's enough here to kind of imply, especially in 39, where it says no free man shall be seized without lawful judgment of their peers. So I think it's okay if you put that one. If you didn't, that's okay too. What about due process of law? Absolutely. We just described it, right? So if you think about due processes, every person is due a process if they're charged with a crime, okay, or charged with violating a law. That there's a process there for them. And in this case, it talks about lawful judgment of your peers, which is part of due process, which would mean the next one, trial by jury, is right there as well, correct?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. What about excessive fines or bail? Not really. I mean, okay, you got to understand, there's a big difference between taxes and fines. You know what I mean? Like taxes would be based on a law, hopefully. You know, prior to this, the king could just tax whenever he wanted, whoever he wanted, how much he wanted. Okay, they start to put some limits on it here. Okay, so a fine is for breaking a rule generally. Okay, and excessive fines are not really covered here, but taxes are. They're not the same thing. We talk about Obamacare, I can teach you about that, okay, the difference between the two. Okay, all right, no cruel and unusual punishment. Not real explicit there. What about the right to petition? You you might be able to make a leap with 14 where it says, and also have a common council of the kingdom, which will cause to be summoned the archbishops, bishops, abbots, earls, and great barons, individually by letters. So a council would be one that would be able to go to the king, the council, yes? But do they really represent the will of the common man? These groups we just talked about, generally not, okay? And certainly the ordinary person does not have the power to petition the king here, okay? All right, habeas corpus. Yeah, okay. And that is a principle that is very important to our system as well, that we get from the British here. Now, that being said, okay, as we move forward here, if we saw something in the Magna Carta, okay, the next one isn't for 400 years, till 1628, right? The next Constitution. So you would assume if it was found in the Magna Carta, it's accepted in 1628 as well, and moving forward, okay? So anything you found in the first one would be eligible for the others as well. That makes sense, okay? Just based on tradition that people have been living under that Constitution for 400 years. That's what they're used to. You don't have to, okay? All right, so under the petition of right, okay, and here we're dealing with a different king, and this is King who? King Charles the First. Charles, does he want to sign this? Not really. Okay. So now there's a parliament. So that council that we heard about in the Magna Carta has now turned into a parliament. Now, if you guys remember, there's two houses in the parliament. What's the upper house? House of Lords. And then the lower house is the House of Commons. So, in 1628, which one of these two houses has the power? Yeah, the upper house. The House of Commons, they're just pacifying the people, letting them think they have a real say in what's going on. Okay. Now, so Charles I, okay. Now, by this time, the Protestant Reformation has taken place, and England has bought into it. Yes. The French, not so much, right? The French remain Catholic. The British, Protestant. Okay. So now we have the Anglican Church and the Church of England break away from Rome. Okay. Now, Charles perceived himself to be divine right. Okay. Which means he's the head of the church as well. Puritans didn't like this, right? Disgruntled, and they fled and so forth. And this, we had all kinds of fights and so forth. As representatives of the common people, the Puritans argued the king's authority was not unlimited. King John had acknowledged this. Okay? Concessions required Parliament's approval rather than simply the nobles' approval before levying a tax. Charles would eventually renege on many of these concessions contained in the petition of right, resulting in civil war, where the army of the Parliament defeated Charles' supporters. They arrested him for treason in 1649. They took his head. Literally. They took his head. Okay? Now, don't mess with the Protestants here. Just kidding. Okay. So, in this document, did you see freedom of speech? I didn't see it. It's not there. It's not explicit. Okay. Freedom of religion? No. Freedom of press? No. Right to bear arms? No. Soldiers in your house? Yes. And number 6, I believe, And whereas great company of soldiers and marines have been dispersed into diverse counties of the realm. Did any guys look that word up? Diverse? I did. You know what it means? Diverse. Put an E on the end. Okay. Counties of the realm and inhabitants against their wills have been compelled to receive them in their houses. Okay. We're going to do away with that. Okay. Unreasonable search and seizure. How many of you guys had that marked? If you look at number 4, it's declared and enacted by the authority of Parliament that no man should be put out of his land, nor prison, nor disinherited, nor put to death without being through due process of law. Disinherited? Maybe? Maybe not. Due process? Yes. Trial by jury? Yes. Excessive fines or bail? No. Cruel and unusual punishment? What do you guys had cruel and unusual punishment? Do you know where you found that?
Just thinking in 4. It doesn't say they can't do cruel and unusual punishment.
They just got to have due process, right? So it doesn't really attack that issue. Okay.
Number 3, it says.
Yeah, go ahead.
It is declared and enacted by mayor agreement taken or be outlet or exiled or in any manner.
But
By the lawful judgment of his peers.
right.
So it wouldn't be.
So I think when you talk about cruel punishment or unusual punishment, you're talking about the punishment needs to fit the crime. So if you're convicted of murdering somebody else, certainly back in this day, they could take your life too. But for a jury of your peers. Yeah. Okay, right to petition. Did you have that one? Zeke, did you have right to petition? Will you look at the top and tell me what the name of the document is called? Now, let's be fair, okay? Who is getting to petition the government here? Does the Parliament have the right to petition the government here? Yes. Okay. Now, so they're pushing for the House of Commons, the commoners, to have this power to petition the king, not just the House of Lords. You following me? Okay. And the House of Commons tends to be a representative of the people. So they have the power to petition the king on behalf of you and I. Does that make sense? So in a sense, yes, the right to petition is found there. It's not specifically stated by the people, okay? But you could put petition, okay? Habeas corpus, as an extension of the Magna Carta, of course, and you may be able to draw from that, from the document that as well, okay? So, this is kind of a soap opera, guys, okay? So Charles II loses his head, or the first, loses his head. Now from there, they're going to go 11 years without a king. So from 1649 to 1660, there's no king. This is known as the Long Parliament. Under the leadership of whom?
Cromwell.
Oliver Cromwell. Okay, how did that work out? Do you know, Sam? Adam, sorry. I knew it when I said it.
Doesn't he end up getting beheaded?
I'm not sure about Cromwell, but it was pretty oppressive. It was like a dictatorship.
Yeah.
Okay. And so in 1660, we're going to have what's called restoration of the king. They're going to bring Charles I's brother. I think it's his brother. Charles II. Maybe it's his son. His son. Okay, Charles II's son. Charles I's son, Charles II. Now the problem with Charles II is that he doesn't have a son. He doesn't have an heir. He has a brother. What's his brother's name? James. What's wrong with James? James is Catholic. That's a problem. So if something happens to Charles II, he dies or loses his head, then there's no heir. The only heir is a Catholic. Well, they put Charles II on the throne anyways. They don't take his head, but he dies. So the heir to the throne is a Catholic, James II. Now, at this time, Parliament passes something called the Clarendon Codes. And they say to James, we're going to let you become king, but you have to follow these rules. Chief among those rules is if you have an heir to the throne, a son, he will be baptized as a Protestant, not a Catholic. Okay? And then, like, all of his ministers and stuff that he appointed to his cabinet had to be Protestants. Okay? He does that, but then he has a son. And he has him baptized in a Catholic ceremony. The Parliament on his head. They're going after him. James II flees the country. Where does he go? Goes to Louis XIV in France to hang out with his good buddy Louis. Okay? Now the British need a king. Now you want to keep the bloodline. You want to have somebody that has that bloodline. Okay? And so they find this guy, William of Orange. Where's Orange? The Netherlands. Yeah, so like if you watch the Olympics and you see the teams from the Netherlands, they wear orange. Okay, this is William of Orange. All right? And his wife is Mary. Not just any Mary. This is Mary of Braganza. Mary is the daughter of James II from his first marriage. So the bloodline is there. Okay? Mary of Braganza. And William of Orange hates the French. He's got a strong army. It's a perfect fit. As long as William the Orange will follow this new constitution, the English Bill of Rights. So this is known as the Glorious Revolution, okay, in England. Okay, not so glorious for Catholics. Okay, now you guys know that Catholics were persecuted in Britain during this time, and Protestants were persecuted in France at this time. Okay, there's no freedom of religion here, people. You understand? In fact, the British and French are fighting wars. Catholics and Protestants. Okay? So, in this new document, you're going to find some new rights. What about freedom of speech? Not real explicit here. Okay? What about freedom of religion? It's not in the text that I gave you. I apologize. Okay. But Mr. Sword says they have freedom of religion. Now, he teaches this stuff, and if he was over here, I'd have him explain it. But again, if you're Catholic, in 1689 in Britain, you're still being persecuted. You know what I mean? But you may be able to worship as you please. Okay? So I'm going to trust Mr. Swords on this, okay? And it's not your fault for not having it, okay? So you can mark yes on freedom of religion, okay? Freedom of the press. No. Right to bear arms? Mr. Swords says it's in there, but not in the text that we have. All right, soldiers in your house? As an extension of an earlier one, yes? Okay. No unreasonable search or seizure as an extension. Due process, yes. Trial by jury, there. Excessive fines or bail, yes, that's in there. We got it. No cruel and unusual punishment, yes, it's in there. We got it. Right to petition, it's in there. Good, got it. And habeas corpus is an extension. Okay. All right. So when we look at that, we look at our rights. Now, what I have listed here, are many of the rights that we have. So freedom of speech, religion, and press can be found in the First Amendment of our Bill of Rights. Okay. The right to bear arms can be found in our Second Amendment. Boarding of soldiers is our Third Amendment. No unreasonable searches is our Fourth. Due process is in our Fifth Amendment. And we added some things. In our Sixth Amendment and Seventh Amendment, you have the right to a trial by jury and a speedy and fair trial, and to face a witness against you. Okay? And then our Eighth Amendment is no cruel and unusual punishment. Okay, so a lot of these rights we are getting handed down to us from the British. Does that make sense? Remember, guys, the first colonists to move here, the English colonists, where they came from. So when they came in 1607 to Jamestown, they were living under the Magna Carta. When they came to Plymouth Rock in 1620, they were living under the Magna Carta, but they were pushing for these new rights in England, especially those Puritans that were upset. Okay? They wanted to practice the religion their own way, not from the Church of England. So when they're in the New World, guys, and the ones that come after that will have lived under the Petition of Right and the English Bill of Rights. And so when they come to the New World, they expect to have those same rights here in the English colonies. Yes? It would not make sense for them to live here and not have the same rights. You understand? So when those rights are threatened, as we get into the 1700s, really the 1760s, they're not going to respond well to that. Okay? Now, guys, this is the story of today. Now, Mrs. Harshberger wanted to talk about this with our houses, but what better place to talk about it than in a government class, right? When we're talking about our rights. Yes? And so we have to be careful and understand the difference between a right that is an actual right under law, under Constitution, and what is perceived to be a right, or just a feeling that you have a right. You know what I mean? Like some people say, well, there should be a right, everybody has right to health care. That's not in here. You know what I mean? And it's not in here. Okay? Now, you might feel it should be a right that everybody has access to quality health care. Okay? But it's not a right. You follow me? So, when it comes to things like vaccines and masks, okay, what rights do we have? Well, what we do have in the Constitution is limits on what our government can and can't do, what our government can and cannot impose on you and I. And we talked about earlier about mask mandates and how we listen to the county health director, right? He's the one that can tell us whether to put a mask on or not. Now, from what I understand from Mrs. Eaton, is that because our levels of infections at the school in Sedgwick County, in the school system in Sedgwick County, that triggers the masks to go on in the schools. Okay? Do you have a right not to wear one? As soon as you walk out those doors, you have a right not to wear one. You know what I mean? This is a private institution. The private institution has mandated that we be wearing masks. If we don't want to be in the private institution, we can leave the private institution, as some have chosen to do. Yes? Okay? That is within their right to do so. Okay? And I know there's been some division among the student body on this, okay? And I hate to see that, because, you know, I like all of you, and I don't want you guys to like dislike each other over this. Okay? I don't like that. I don't like the faculty being divided on this. Okay, I have my opinions. I have a group of teachers that I'm pretty close with, and I would say I'm in the minority of opinion within that group of friends of mine. Okay. I believe that if people feel strongly about something, they should stand up for it. Okay? And to give you the God honest truth, guys. I mean, I have a ton of respect for Mr. Lagenfeld and what he's doing. He's standing on his principles. And he's risking his income over it. You understand what he's doing there. You know, I mean, he's putting it on the line. Okay? Whether you agree with him or not, he's putting it on the line. Okay? He's got 5 kids. His wife doesn't work. You understand? That's putting it on the line. So, I mean, for some of you to feel passionate enough about to do that, I mean, I got to respect that. Okay, and when we see protests, guys, it is so important, and we will get into this, guys, as we move through this. Last summer, when we had the Black Lives Matter protests, okay, in cities across America, some of you may have agreed with those protests, some of you may have disagreed with those protests. But what we all have to agree on is that people have a right to do it, whether you agree with that protest or not. Okay, we have to support that, even if we disagree with the people that are doing it. It's their right. They feel strongly about something and they're saying, I am going to protest this. Okay? So, as we will learn through this history, when people do protest, sometimes they break the law. Because what is not protected is violent protest. Right? Damage of people's property. Looting. That is not protected. Okay? So you have to draw a distinction. So I would just say, I don't know if we can take the temperature down a little bit here, but just try and put yourself in other people's shoes. Okay? And doggone it, to do anything in civilly as a society, you should protect people's right to protest against the government, against the school, whatever it be. Okay? Because if we don't, we may lose the right to it. Okay? This is coming. You understand, this is coming. If they try and create vaccine passports to get on a train, get on a plane, to go into a restaurant, go in a grocery store, this is happening in Europe right now as we speak. This is happening in Australia as we speak. You're going to see protests. And you may disagree with those protests, or you may agree with those protests. But they're going to happen. And it was happening yesterday in New York City. It was a fairly large protest in New York City. Now, our media doesn't report it, but if you know where to get news of international news, has there been massive protests in Europe, in Paris. Okay, it takes a lot to get the French fired up. Okay, but you're not allowed to go into a grocery store right now in Paris without a vaccine passport. Do the vaccines work? Do the masks work? Flu vaccine doesn't work. Some of the time, sometimes it does, right? How many of you guys taking the flu vaccine? Okay, I've never taken the flu vaccine. Have I gotten the flu before? I don't know, maybe once. I mean, if the vaccine really worked, right, then those that got vaccinated would not have to worry about the unvaccinated, correct? Okay. Now, I think what they're saying is the vaccine helps protect you from getting it really bad, yes? Okay. Now, I don't know if I buy that 100% because of information that you're getting from different countries around the world. Okay. But let's say it's true. Okay, so if you're vaccinated, you're protected against getting really ill, but not protected from getting it and spreading it, correct? I mean, that's the hope, right? I mean, like, if we get vaccinated, then the chances of us getting really sick and dying are diminished. Okay. So if somebody doesn't want to get vaccinated, whatever reason, does that affect you if you're vaccinated? Because you can still get it if you're vaccinated. Can you get it from another vaccinated person? Yes. So an unvaccinated person can give it to you too. Yes? What's the difference of you getting it from a vaccinated or unvaccinated person? Is there a difference? Not that I've heard of. So if you're vaccinated and you're wearing a mask, then you have certain protections. Does it matter what I do in that case to you? Because you're already vaccinated. Are you following me here? So when the President of the United States comes out and says he's going to protect vaccinated workers from unvaccinated workers, what does that mean? Because vaccinated people can get and pass the virus on as well. What does that mean? talking. Gavin, you all right?
Yeah.
Got something you want to say?
No.
You sure?
Yeah.
Come on, Gabby. You don't want to talk about it.
Oh, I don't mind people talking about it. I just have my own opinions. I just don't like talking about it because it makes me angry.
Because you want everybody to get vaccinated.
I'm not saying anything.
Try to pull it out of you. Okay. Hey guys, we'll get into the colonial era tomorrow. Friday will be a video.